Strong Schools Maryland interviewed all leading Democratic candidates for governor. We asked them the simple question: what will be different with our education system 4 years from now with you as governor? Here's what they had to say.
Well, there are three things that I would look at, and I've done this in the past, and that is one, the expansion of early childhood education. Seeing that grow throughout the state, that we have more robust and qualified and good early childhood system put in place. And then I look at, the promotion at the middle school level, because most of our children start dropping out and start falling behind in the middle school, and that's a problem for everybody across the United States, but especially in challenging areas. So are we doing something to show that middle school promotion is going up? And then ninth grade. Children drop out at ninth grade. So truancy rate is a huge issue for us, making sure we reduce the amount of truancy throughout the state. And dropout. Those are the things that I think in a 4-year span, if we start seeing a reverse of that, I should throw one more thing on there. Sure. If I can. Teachers. If we see that we're not losing our teachers with 7 years of experience, that they're staying in our state and they're staying in some of our most challenging areas, that is a good indication that the leadership for that school system is going to be there. Because those teachers who stay 7 years there will become our principals. And if they have good leadership skills as a teacher and we teach them how to be great principals, they'll attract good teachers. So those four things would be an indication that we're moving in the right direction.
I intend to serve for 2 terms.
Okay.
At the end of those 8 years, our schools will have been fully funded for some time. We'll fully fund them before the end of the first term. But then it's about the implementation once they're fully funded. We will have more community schools where we're using the buildings all day long and even into the evening for the students and for their parents, having things like, classes there preparing people for, like job training, for example. We will have a lot more career education. We would have made our community colleges free and be pushing more dual credit courses into our high schools so young people in the high school can be training to become a nurse or in an apprenticeship program to become a teacher or a first responder or with the building trades. We'll be retaining more of our students as a result because we'll be teaching to different learning styles. Schools will be fully funded and they'll be dynamically connected to the economy. My son's in kindergarten, my daughter's in 6th grade. They're both in the public schools. And in between those 2 grades, usually on 3rd grade, young people start to get an idea for what they want to become. Well, those conversations under a jealous administration with students would be more robust because the high schools, we would have gotten beyond the lie that all of you are going to college and that's why you go to high school. Say, high school is here to prepare you for a great career. And so we would be having conversations about being a plumber or a programmer or a nurse with, or a first responder or a teacher with an understanding that when they get to junior high school, there'll be ways to prepare them for each of those. And when they get to high school, they'll all be preparing for their career. And for many of them, the next step will be college. And for many of them, the next step will be an apprenticeship program. But for all of them, there'll be a greater confidence. It's easy in Maryland to feel like there's a greater confidence that they'll be able to support a family. And it's easy in Maryland to feel like there's a shortage of good jobs for our kids. And then you look around the state and you realize, wow, there's all those people who moved here from everywhere for good jobs. And you say, no. Apparently there's a shortage of our young people that we've trained for the good jobs that we have. I'll give you an example, just about construction management. Constant demand in Maryland's economy for 3,000 new construction managers. Our public university system prepares about 24. That shouldn't be possible. We should be producing at least 2,000 of them in Maryland, if not all 3,000, and that should be linked up to programs in high school. And we should be having conversations with young girls and young boys about construction management, knowing that it's a key need in our state that we're under-preparing people for, and it's something that leads to a 6-figure career pretty quickly. That's fundamentally, I want to make sure that our public education system becomes the fattest pipeline into every industry in our state, and that every young person comes out of high school ready for a career. For many of those, that'll be college. For many of those, that'll be an actual trade apprenticeship program.
You will see
a huge advancement in the access to pre-K programs. You will see the first components of Kerwin, which I think are going to be enhanced, especially early grade tutoring, to make sure young people are not falling behind on reading and math. Hopkins is doing some incredible work. It's bringing in those small group, individual tutors, whatever we see shows the best practices to inform our decisions. So I think something to make sure those early grade takeoff is much stronger. And then on the tail end, much stronger career and technology education opportunities for all young people. Not tracking, but the goal of Kerwin is academically, you should be ready to succeed by the end of 10th grade to go on to college, so that by the time you start leaving high school, you are walking away with an associate's degree, you're walking away with college credit, you're walking away with a job certification, and maybe all of those things, so that you are career and college ready the moment you leave high school. A high school diploma has to be more than just an attendance certificate. It has to mean something valuable for moving forward.
Great. For the students
we will have universal pre-K. We will have before kindergarten education available to areas of need. We will have a new pipeline of teachers. We will have more principals. We will have a curriculum that's benchmarks against international standards. We will have more community schools, many more. They will be in Baltimore and elsewhere. We will have after-school programs. We will have summer programs. Governor Hogan thinks it's good education policy to move the start date until after Labor Day. I think that's bad education policy, in addition to being superficial. But I will have real concrete accomplishments. And when I say it takes a long time, I'm only saying that the full job won't be done in 4 years. But in all these areas, we'll have the concrete accomplishments that I enumerated and many more.
So after 4 years, and first we have to be open-eyed about nobody is going to solve every problem in public education in Maryland in 4 years. The problems we have are generations in the making, and what we need now is a generation-long commitment to really invest in education. It shouldn't just be based on one term of a governor or 2 terms of a governor. This should be a multi-decade commitment to ensuring equity in education in Maryland. After 4 years, what would I hope you would see? First of all, I would hope you would see that by the end of 4 years, we would have America's best apprenticeship programs in place to create a pathway for people into good jobs who aren't going to go to college. Thing 2 we would see is I would like to think that we would see real equity for students with special needs. And we would begin to see the impact of resources going into historically disadvantaged communities. My wife is an educator in Baltimore City Public Schools right now. The resources in her classrooms are largely resources that she brings. I would hope that by the end of the first year, that's not something that she would be thinking of anymore. Right now, my son goes to Poly High School, and the science labs there, they have some resources, but they're hardly the kind of abundant resources that you see in more privileged educational environments. So I would like to see the almost visible. You should be able to see the changes in terms of access to resources.
It'll be very different than the Maryland I grew up in the sense that, I remember what it was to sit in so-called temporary trailers that are still there decades later when I go back to those schools. And I remember trying to learn in freezing cold and sweltering heat. Those are the conditions that we sometimes put our kids in. I remember what it was to try to learn French in a foreign language class because of budget cuts where they couldn't hire another teacher. The teacher had to teach halfway through the year French and Spanish at the same time. I remember my parents having to pay out of pocket for school supplies because our schools were not equipping our teachers and treating them like the professionals they are. All of those things are going to change dramatically. What I'm going to do is empower the local community to raise our children. I'm going to empower teachers because what they do is God's work. I'm going to make sure that every child has a fighting chance to realize their potential, which means that from the time they start with their early childhood education to the time they graduate and beyond, I, as governor, am going to support them and let them know that I have their back, because I know that Maryland educators and schools had mine, and that's how I got a chance to go from a basement apartment, which is where my family grew up in, to being able to have the honor of a lifetime working as Michelle Obama's policy director on many of these issues like education that I think we all deeply care about.